One of the ways that I use AI in my business is by taking the cover photo of one of my items that otherwise may not sell and turn that into an AI modeled photo. Here are just a few examples of where I've done this. This was an item that I had sitting for a while and I couldn't figure out why it didn't sell. Maybe it was the smaller size, maybe it was pricing initially, but either way, I needed this item to move. I decided that it was worth reworking and putting an AI cover photo on. This was my original cover photo, and for whatever reason, it wasn't translating right to the buyer. So I decided to put it on this image using ChatGPT and style it in a very particular way to get it to the right buyer and also match it with the keywords that were in my title. This item ended up selling very quickly soon after. I also sold this men's cardigan on Poshmark. Men's cardigans are one of my best sellers, but for whatever reason, again, this item was not moving. Here was my original cover photo, pretty bland, can't really tell what it is, a little bit shapeless. And so I asked ChatGPT to put it into this image, style it appropriately, again, matching that up to some of my keywords to direct it to a very targeted buyer. And again, received an offer very soon after that I then accepted. Last quick example of another one that quickly sold. This item was actually styled really well on our mannequin. I felt like the buyer could see the form. However, this was listed towards the beginning of summer. We have moved into colder weather, and so it was an out of season item, and the popularity for things like this, a sleeveless silk tropical print item, not very much in demand for the winter season. So I felt like it needed some elevating in order to get it to move. Otherwise, it was just going to keep sitting in my store. And so I made a modeled image like this, and you can see that it sold very soon after that. So there are many sites or apps that you can use to generate these kind of photos. Some of them put them on people. Some of them can generate flat lays for you. Some of them can do ghost mannequins. There's all kinds of AI generated images that you can use with your items. I personally use ChatGPT, and for the purpose of this video, that's what I'm going to be using. I'm going to show you exactly how I use ChatGPT, which is probably the most common thing that I see people using for this, and how to apply it to your own listings if you need some that need a competitive edge, get them on an AI model photo, and get those items to sell. ChatGPT does have a free version, and they also have paid subscriptions. If you do plan on doing this or really generating a lot of things, whether it's images, videos, or whatever, you probably want to go ahead and bump up to the subscription because the free version only allows a handful of uses in order to generate images. I use ChatGPT for other things, so for me, I was already paying for the subscription, and this is an excellent tool. For the rest of this video, my goal is going to be to show you exactly how you can use ChatGPT in order to generate these kinds of images. I'm going to start by telling you how I even decide which of my own items this is worth doing, because I definitely do not do this for everything. And I will also show you my generic prompt that you can copy and paste, tweak for yourself, and enter into ChatGPT if you want to try this. I'll show you start to finish how to do it on my screen. And we'll finish up with some cautions, because anytime you are using an image of something that is not of just your actual item, whether it's a stock photo, an AI modeled photo, whatever it is, there is always a risk. Doing this can be very time consuming, so I certainly don't do it with every item. I would say that if I had to guesstimate, and it kind of depends on how many revisions you have to do, my goal is to always have ChatGPT give me the right image the first time, but this could take you per item anywhere from, I would say, about 2 minutes to generate just one image, all the way to, if you have to do many revisions, it could take a long time. And so because it is so time consuming, I don't even do this for like 1% of my listings. It's just a handful where I think they need a little bit of extra love to get them to move. I do not recommend doing this for all of your listings. Where I like to apply this is if I see that an item is sitting, but I think it's an item that should have sold, I go ahead and put it on an AI modeled image. Usually I can tell why the item didn't sell. Maybe we have it marketed towards a certain buyer, but there's there's just something about the item that isn't translating right to the buyer. They just can't see themselves in it. Or sometimes an item is somewhat lifeless or shapeless and it just needs a little bit of vibrancy and shape brought to it. For instance, here's a couple of examples of some of my style-based pieces where I didn't think the customer could really see the vision of what I was trying to do, and so I generated an AI modeled photo and it quickly sold after that. So here's a really good example of one. This is my AI generated image, but here was my original cover photo. This is a Jones, New York item. I'll show you the label here. Now this Jones, New York is typically not like a younger vibe. It's typically not something that people seek out after. It's not a good bolo brand, but it tends to have some decent style-based pieces that I like to market to the right buyer, and I've had some pretty good luck with this brand. This dress in particular, I was thinking very fairy, very, very boho, but it did not sell with just this cover image. And looking at the image, I can see why. It looks kind of shapeless. It looks pretty mature. If I didn't see any accessories with it, I could not vision this on the type of customer that I was trying to market it to. I styled it by thinking about the buyer and how they would wear it, the buyer that I was trying to market to. Added some combat boots, we threw on a handbag, we have some accessories here, and you can see this looks a lot more younger and more targeted to the buyer that I was going for versus this right here. And it sold very quickly after getting it reworked. Same issue with this one here. This was my original cover image. I was trying to market this very romantic goth and it just wasn't selling that way, and I can see why. And so I had ChatGPT generate that kind of an image where it looked very whimsical, very dark romantic. You can see this one is way more dramatized, but I actually like the image that it created and I decided to test it out, and it sold so quickly after putting it up. Now let's grab a couple of items that I haven't reworked yet, and I'll show you on screen exactly how I prompt ChatGPT to create these for me. So on Nifty, what I like to do, since I use it for sorting my inventory, is I just sort by my oldest. Remember, most of the time for my own business, you can choose to do it a different way. I'm really looking for those older items and why they didn't sell and why they're sitting and get them to move again. So for instance, we have this rag and bone sweater here. This is a great both brand and style-based piece that I think should have sold. Now there's a million things that I could do with this, such as I could update pricing, I could update my title. For today, we're just going to generate this image. So I'm going to edit my item and I'm going to edit through Nifty. That way it updates on everything when we're done. But here is the cover image of this item. All right, so we're now on ChatGPT. I am just in a new chat. I have saved my cover image into the files of my computer. That way I can quickly upload it. And I'm going to hit the plus button here and add photos. And I went ahead and selected my image. Now we are going to prompt. You can customize this however you want. I find that the more specific you are, the harder of a time that it has. So for me, there's a few things that I tell it to do and then I just kind of let it make up its own mind and then I go from there. I start by saying, please put this, and then I usually say what the item is. That way it knows. Sweater, vest on an AI model. I like to tell it that square mode is a must. It doesn't always get that right. I prefer to have square images because it fills the whole frame for most platforms. It's just optimized for my workflow, but you don't have to do this. I find that if I tell it it's a must, it usually does it. We all know that AI is not perfect, and so sometimes it doesn't listen. And then from here, I like to tell it how I want it styled. I want the model to have old money vibes and background maybe. If you don't tell it background, it generally puts it into just studio lighting. So if that's something that you want, you can do that as well. From here, you can add very specific details. You can say that you want it styled a certain way. I could either have it start doing this and just see what it does, or I could be very specific. Let's say, for instance, that I wanted it to put an Oxford shirt underneath. Please put a white collared shirt underneath. I don't tend to get too specific, but you can. Let's see how this goes. And you can see that ChatGPT is slowly doing my image. We started at 9:08. It's now 9:09. It's probably going to finish at 9:10. So like I said, about 2 minutes. And I usually go and do other things while this is generating in between items. All right, so here is my AI modeled image from our first prompt. From here, I need to decide if I'm happy with this image. What I usually like to do is compare the original image with this one. For instance, I can see that this one's a little bit more thin, it's a little bit more sheer, and so it doesn't necessarily look exactly the same. So from here, I could choose to keep this image, download it, and use it, or can tell it things like this sweater vest is a little more thin. Can you fix? Also, if you're unhappy with the background, if you're unhappy with the model, you want to accessorize differently, or maybe you want a very specific pose, you can do that too. All right, so you can see that it did make it a little bit more thin. You can also see that the model has completely changed. I find that the more revisions that I do, the worse the picture gets. So sometimes it's worth it to me if I feel like it's straying too far away to just completely start over with the prompt, but then include everything that I would need. So in this case, I would say something like in my initial prompt, this is a thin sweater vest. All right, so let's say we are going to go ahead with this image. I would then download it. I can then upload this into my Nifty or platforms or whichever cross-posting tool you use, drag it to the first cover photo if that's what I want. And then I personally like putting a disclaimer, which I'll talk about here in a second. And then I can go ahead and just update that across all platforms. All right, and you can see it's been updated. All right, let's do one more. I have this unbranded kimono, and typically stuff like this does sell for me. Not sure why this one's sitting, but I'm going to give it a little bit more of a competitive edge by generating an AI modeled photo. So I've added my image. Please put this kimono on an AI model. I want the model to have romantic goth vibes. Square photo is a must. So not many details. Let's just see what it does. All right, so we have this image here. Now I'm looking at my original image and it is definitely a lot longer than this one. And there's a few things that I want to change up. So I'm going to say something like this kimono is longer. Please also make the background lighter so the item can stand out. All right, so I definitely ended up having to fight with this item and recreate a new chat and prompt it again. And this is the modeled image that we ended up with. So as you can see, it is not a perfect system. Sometimes ChatGPT gets it right the first time, and sometimes you've got to mess around with it. Once you do this so many times, you'll find a prompt that works a little bit better for you. You'll start to learn what to include in the first place and what not to. And generally, you can start getting it right on the first time. Something else that I like to do within my prompt, this is more of an advanced technique, but if you know the vibe that you're going for and it fits into a character from a TV show, or maybe let's say you're like trying to make it look like Taylor Swift, you can tell it, give it Taylor Swift vibes, or make it look like something that could be worn on Friends. ChatGPT does have restrictions on certain things. So if it feels like you're trying to cheat the system, then you might have to use a couple different prompts to tweak it and get it to do what you want. Make sure that it's getting as many details as possible and actually looks like your item. Because there could be slight differences on your cover image versus your item, and also you have accessories that will not be included in the sale, I like to put a disclaimer in the bottom of my description for all of my listings. And if I can't get ChatGPT to get it pretty right, meaning it looks pretty much like my item, then I usually end up not using it because I don't want the buyer to think they're getting something that they're not. It is only when it gets it really, really right that I choose to use it. Most of the time it does. You can also train your ChatGPT and make different like profiles and settings you want, and then prompt it to do a certain type of prompt for you. For instance, you could tell it like, hey, I've got this very specific set of things I want in a whimsy goth styling. And then if you train it, you can upload your image and say, do the whimsy goth styling. I've also done some prompts where I said, hey, I just want you to style this however would best be marketed to somebody on eBay, Poshmark, or Depop just to see what it would do. And it also looks pretty good that way too. Play around with it. It is all about customizing it to your own business. And also be forewarned, and I'm sure I'm going to actually have comments on this video. I can already see it coming. There are some people that really, really hate AI. I actually gotten not a lot, but a couple of comments from using AI images on my listings from people that believe AI is bad for the planet. And so I've had people attack me on listings. I find them to be extremely beneficial for selling certain items, but again, I'm not using it on every single one. Just know the risks that are involved with that and the potential limitations that you might have. Anyways, this was a highly requested video. I hope it was helpful. If you try out generating some of your own images, let me know how it goes down below. And remember, it's going to take you tweaking it and a couple of tries before you figure out a prompt that really works for you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.